Why do humans care so much about what strangers think? Imagine walking into a crowded coffee shop. You are wearing something you like, you feel comfortable. You order your drink, find a table, and sit down. Then you notice someone across the room looking at you. You do not know this person, you may never see them again. And yet, something changes. Suddenly, you wonder whether your clothes look strange. You become aware of how you are sitting. You think about your voice. You may even replay the last thing you said to the cashier and wonder whether you sounded awkward. Nothing about your actual situation has changed, but your mind has. A stranger's glance, a stranger's possible opinion, a stranger's completely unknown judgment has somehow acquired the power to make you feel different about yourself. Why? Why should the opinion of someone we will never meet again matter so much? And the strange thing is that this happens even when we know intellectually that it should not matter. You can tell yourself, who cares what they think, and still care. You can know that everyone else is probably too busy thinking about themselves to notice you, and still feel watched. You can understand that a mistake will be forgotten in minutes, and still lie awake that night, remembering it. This seems irrational, but underneath it is something much older and more important than embarrassment. Human beings evolved in a world where other people's opinions could determine whether we were accepted, protected, helped, ignored, or rejected. For most of human history, being pushed outside the social group was not merely uncomfortable, it could be dangerous. Our modern minds live in a radically different world. Our ancient social instincts do not. And that mismatch may explain why a stranger's opinion can sometimes feel strangely powerful. The invisible audience inside your head. There is a peculiar experience that almost everyone has had. You walk into a room and suddenly become aware of yourself from the outside. Instead of simply experiencing the moment, you imagine how you appear to other people. You are no longer just sitting in a chair. You are watching yourself sitting in a chair. You are no longer simply speaking. You are imagining yourself speaking. You become both the person living the experience and the person observing the person living it. Psychologists sometimes talk about this in terms of the imaginary audience, especially when discussing adolescence. The basic idea is simple. We can become convinced that other people are paying far more attention to us than they actually are. But the phenomenon does not disappear when adolescence ends. Adults experience it constantly. You trip on the sidewalk, nobody laughs, you keep walking. But for the next 30 seconds, your brain behaves as though you have just performed on a stage. You say something awkward during a meeting. The conversation moves on. Hours later, you are still thinking about it. You post a photo online. 10 people react positively. One person makes a mildly negative comment. Guess which one your mind keeps returning to? The answer is not that humans are simply insecure. Something deeper is happening. Your brain is constantly trying to answer a social question. How am I being seen? That question is incredibly useful. It is also exhausting. For most of human history, you couldn't escape your reputation. Consider the world in which human psychology developed. There were no cities of millions of people, no internet, no strangers passing you on a highway, no anonymous comments from people thousands of miles away. Human beings generally lived in relatively small social groups. Your neighbors knew you. Your family knew you. The people you depended on knew you. If you were trustworthy, generous, aggressive, unreliable, useful, dangerous, skilled, or foolish, people could remember. Your reputation followed you. This mattered because humans are unusually dependent on cooperation. We are not the strongest animals. We do not have claws like a tiger. We cannot outrun many predators. We are physically vulnerable compared with many other species, but humans can cooperate on an extraordinary scale. We hunt together, we share food, we protect children together, we teach each other, we make tools, we divide labor, we care for injured members of the group, and eventually we build entire civilizations by coordinating the behavior of people who are not even related to one another. But cooperation creates a problem. If you are going to depend on other people, you need to know whom you can trust, and other people need to know whether they can trust you. This makes reputation incredibly valuable. A person who repeatedly breaks promises becomes difficult to rely on. A person who shares resources may become valuable to the group. A person who attacks others may become feared. A person who helps during a crisis may become respected. In such a world, what other people think of you is not merely an abstract matter of vanity. It can affect your life. So imagine a human brain that has been shaped by countless generations in which social information mattered enormously. Then place that brain in a modern shopping mall. Suddenly, it encounters hundreds of strangers. Most of them do not care who you are. Most will never see you again. They have their own problems, their own relationships, their own worries, their own private thoughts. Yet your brain still asks, what do they think of me? It is as if an ancient social alarm system has been installed in a world where it receives far more signals than it was designed to handle. Rejection hurts because belonging is not optional. There is another reason social judgment can feel so powerful. Human beings need belonging. This does not mean every person needs hundreds of friends. Some people are naturally more social than others. Some prefer solitude. Some need large communities, while others are happiest with a few close relationships. But nearly everyone needs some form of meaningful connection. We want to feel that somewhere with someone we belong. That desire can be so strong that rejection often feels physically painful. There is a reason people use physical language to describe emotional rejection. My heart hurts. I feel crushed. It felt like a punch. I couldn't breathe. These are not merely poetic expressions. Emotional distress can produce real bodily reactions because the brain does not treat social experiences as completely separate from physical survival. Of course, being disliked by someone is not literally the same thing as being physically injured, but the nervous system does not always make such a neat distinction. Social threats can activate stress responses. Your heart may beat faster, your muscles may tense, your stomach may tighten. You may become hyper-aware of what is happening around you. Your attention narrows. You start searching for clues. What did they mean? Why did they say that? Did I do something wrong? Are they angry? Do they dislike me? Could I fix it? This is not simply your brain being dramatic. It is trying to solve a problem. Unfortunately, modern life gives it an almost unlimited supply of ambiguous social information to analyze. The cruel power of ambiguity. Imagine that a friend sends you a message, okay. That's it, 2 words. Now your brain has a problem. What does okay mean? Are they annoyed? Are they busy? Did you say something wrong? Are they disappointed? Maybe their phone is about to die. Maybe they're driving. Maybe they're simply tired. The message itself contains very little information. Your brain fills in the missing information. And because social relationships matter, the brain often treats uncertainty as something that needs to be resolved. This is why a neutral facial expression can sometimes look angry when you are already worried someone dislikes you. It is why silence can feel hostile. It is why someone looking away can feel like rejection. The important point is that the brain does not simply record social reality like a camera. It interprets it. And when the stakes feel high, it can become biased toward detecting danger. That makes sense from a survival perspective. If you lived in a small group where being rejected could have serious consequences, it might be safer to notice possible signs of disapproval than to ignore them. The cost of a false alarm might be embarrassment. The cost of missing a genuine social threat could be much greater. So the brain may sometimes choose better to worry unnecessarily than to miss the warning. That strategy can be useful, but in modern life, it can produce a strange result. We become anxious about judgments that may not even exist. The spotlight effect. There is a fascinating psychological phenomenon known as the spotlight effect. The basic idea is that people tend to overestimate how much other people notice them. Imagine you arrive at a party wearing a shirt with a small stain. You notice it immediately. Because you know it is there, it becomes extremely noticeable to you. You may assume everyone else sees it, but most people probably don't. Why? Because they are living inside their own perspective. They are thinking about their own clothes, their own conversations, their own appearance, their own worries, their own mistakes. Your shirt is not the center of their mental universe. This seems obvious when you think about someone else. You can watch a stranger walk past with a crooked tie and barely register it. But if your own tie is crooked, suddenly it feels like the most important fact in the building. This is one of the great tricks of consciousness. We experience our own thoughts continuously. We do not experience other people's thoughts continuously, so our own concerns feel enormous. Other people's concerns remain mostly invisible. That creates an illusion. Because your own embarrassment occupies so much mental space, it can feel as though everyone else must be noticing it too. But they are not inside your mind, they are inside theirs, and their mind is probably doing something remarkably similar. Everyone is watching everyone, and almost nobody is watching you. There is something almost comical about this. Imagine a room full of 100 people. Each person is worrying about how they appear to the other 99. Now imagine that most of those 99 people are doing the same thing. The result is a strange social illusion. Everyone feels observed, yet most people are primarily observing themselves. You think they are looking at you. They think you are looking at them. You worry that everyone noticed your awkward moment. They are worrying about their own awkward moments. You remember something embarrassing you said 5 years ago. The person who heard it may not remember it at all. This is why one of the most liberating realizations about social anxiety is also one of the simplest. Other people are usually not thinking about you nearly as much as you imagine. That does not mean nobody cares. Some people absolutely do. Friends care, partners care, parents care, coworkers may care, enemies may care, and sometimes strangers really are judging us. The point is not that judgment never happens. The point is that our minds often exaggerate its frequency, intensity, and duration. A stranger might notice your mistake. They might even judge you for it. Then they might forget you existed 10 minutes later. Meanwhile, you may spend 3 days analyzing what happened. The stranger's judgment lasted 30 seconds. Your imagined judgment lasted 72 hours. That is the strange part. Why negative opinions have so much power. Now consider something even more interesting. Suppose 10 people compliment you. One person criticizes you. Which opinion will you remember? Often, the negative one. This tendency is sometimes called the negativity bias. Negative information can attract more attention and have a stronger emotional impact than equally strong positive information. Again, there's a possible evolutionary explanation. If you lived in a dangerous environment, ignoring a negative signal could be costly. If someone told you there was a predator nearby, paying attention was useful. If someone told you the weather was pleasant, you could probably afford to ignore it. Negative information often demanded action. The modern world is different. A negative comment on the internet is not a predator. A coworker looking annoyed is not necessarily a threat. A stranger laughing across the room may have nothing to do with you. But our emotional systems do not always understand the difference immediately. They react to signals. And social criticism is one of the most powerful signals we have. This creates an unpleasant imbalance. Praise can feel good, criticism can feel dangerous. So one negative opinion can overshadow 20 positive ones. And because humans are good at remembering emotionally charged events, embarrassing experiences can remain vivid long after they stop being useful. The internet turned social judgment into a strange new animal. For most of human history, reputation was local. Today, reputation can be global. This changes the psychological landscape dramatically. A person can wake up, open a phone, and encounter opinions from hundreds or thousands of people. Some are friends, some are strangers, some are experts, some are angry, some are joking, some are deliberately trying to provoke a reaction. Some know almost nothing about the person they are judging. Yet, all of these opinions can appear in the same small rectangle in your hand. The human brain evolved to interpret social information from relatively small communities. The internet can deliver an enormous flood of social feedback. A photograph can receive praise, then criticism, then jokes, then comparisons, then silence, then another post, then another. And because platforms often measure social reactions numerically, something that was once vague becomes visible. Likes, views, followers, comments, shares. These numbers can make social approval feel measurable. That is psychologically powerful. Imagine saying to a person in a small village thousands of years ago, one day you will be able to know exactly how many people approve of your joke. They might not understand what you mean, but modern humans do. We have created machines that turn social feedback into numbers, and numbers feel objective. If one post receives 20 likes and another receives 2,000, The mind can easily interpret that difference as a difference in social value, but it isn't necessarily. The numbers may reflect timing, algorithms, audience size, randomness, trends, or countless other factors. Still, our emotional systems can treat the numbers as evidence. People liked me, people ignored me, people rejected me. The machine becomes a mirror, and we start asking it to tell us who we are. Shaq, the stranger's opinion can become a mirror. This leads to a deeper question. Why do we care what people think of us at all? Perhaps because other people are part of how we understand ourselves. You know yourself from the inside, but you also learn about yourself through reactions. Someone laughs at your joke, you think, I'm funny. Someone trusts you with a secret. You think, I'm trustworthy. Someone asks you for advice. You think, maybe I know something useful. Someone rejects you. You may think, maybe there's something wrong with me. This does not mean other people determine who you are, but their reactions provide information. Human beings are social learners. From childhood onward, we constantly observe how others respond to us and adjust our understanding of ourselves. The problem comes when we give those reactions too much authority. A person criticizes you, and instead of thinking, that person disliked something I did, you think, that proves something is wrong with me. Those are completely different conclusions. The first is information, the second is identity, and once criticism becomes connected to identity, it becomes much harder to ignore. We don't just want to be liked, we want to be understandable. There is another layer to this. Humans do not merely want approval, we also want to be understood. Being misunderstood can feel surprisingly painful. Imagine telling someone an important story about your life and realizing they interpreted it in the exact opposite way from what you intended. You may feel frustrated. You may want to explain, no, that's not what I meant. That's not who I am. You don't understand. Why does this matter so much? Because our identity is partly a story we tell ourselves. We have an internal model of who we are. Maybe you think of yourself as kind, independent, funny, intelligent, loyal, brave, creative, responsible. Then someone treats you as though you are the opposite. Suddenly there is a conflict. Your internal story says one thing, their perception says another, and the mind wants to resolve the contradiction. Sometimes this is useful. Maybe they noticed something about you that you did not see. Sometimes their judgment is simply wrong. But because identity matters, we may become obsessed with changing someone's perception. Not because we need their approval exactly, but because we want the world to reflect the person we believe ourselves to be. Why embarrassment feels so huge? Embarrassment is an especially interesting emotion because it exists almost entirely in a social context. You can be alone and make a mistake, but embarrassment usually becomes stronger when someone else sees it. You spill coffee on yourself alone in your kitchen. Annoying. You spill coffee on yourself while giving a presentation. Humiliating. The physical event is almost identical. The difference is the audience. Embarrassment is partly about the gap between how we want to appear and how we fear we actually appeared. You want to be competent. You made a mistake. You want to be graceful. You tripped. You want to appear confident. Your voice shook. You want to appear intelligent. You said something foolish. The pain comes from the imagined loss of status. But embarrassment has another function. It can communicate something. When someone blushes, apologizes, laughs nervously, or looks ashamed after making a mistake, other people may interpret those signals as evidence that the person understands the social problem. In that sense, embarrassment can help repair relationships. It says, I know that went badly. I understand the rule. I'm not ignoring what happened. I still want to belong. So even an emotion that feels terrible may have a social purpose. The problem begins when the emotion continues long after the social problem has disappeared. The difference between reputation and self-worth. Caring about what others think is not inherently unhealthy. In fact, some concern about reputation is useful. If you never care what anyone thinks, you may become selfish, unreliable, rude, or careless. Imagine a person who genuinely has no concern for anyone else's opinion. They interrupt constantly. They never apologize. They break promises. They ignore social boundaries. They hurt people and shrug. That person may feel wonderfully free. They may also be unbearable to live with. Social awareness is valuable. The problem is not caring. The problem is confusing social feedback with personal worth. You can care about being respected without needing universal approval. You can listen to criticism without accepting every criticism as truth. You can admit that you made a mistake without deciding that you are a failure. You can recognize that someone dislikes you without concluding that you are unlikable. This distinction sounds simple. In practice, it can be incredibly difficult because the mind often wants a much cleaner answer. Am I good or bad? Am I accepted or rejected? Am I impressive or embarrassing? Do people like me or not? Reality is rarely that simple. The impossible goal of being liked by everyone. There is a particularly cruel trap hidden inside the desire for social approval. The more people you try to please, the more contradictory their expectations become. One person wants you to be ambitious. Another thinks ambition is selfish. One person wants you to speak confidently. Another thinks you are arrogant. One person wants you to be spontaneous. Another wants you to be responsible. One person thinks you should take risks. Another thinks you should be careful. One person thinks you talk too much. Another thinks you are too quiet. There is no version of yourself that will satisfy everyone, not even close. And this means that the goal of universal approval is impossible from the beginning. You are not failing because everyone does not like you. The task itself cannot be completed. Even if everyone around you liked you today, their opinions could change tomorrow. And even if everyone agreed about you, their judgment would not necessarily be accurate. People see fragments. They see your behavior in certain situations. They do not experience your entire inner world. They do not know every reason behind every decision. They do not see every private struggle. They do not know what you intended unless you tell them. So, when someone forms an opinion about you, they are working with incomplete information. That includes the people who know you well, and it certainly includes strangers. The paradox of trying too hard. Something strange happens when we become desperate to control how other people see us. We often become less natural. A person who desperately wants to appear confident may monitor every movement. Someone trying desperately to seem intelligent may avoid saying anything uncertain. Someone trying to appear likable may agree with everyone. Someone trying to appear cool may pretend not to care. But other people can sometimes sense this effort. The harder you try to manufacture an image, the less relaxed you become. And the less relaxed you become, the more you monitor yourself. And the more you monitor yourself, the more self-conscious you become. It becomes a loop. I need them to like me. So you watch yourself. Am I saying the right thing? You become tense. They probably noticed I'm nervous. You monitor yourself even more. Now I'm acting strangely. You become more nervous, and the cycle continues. Ironically, the desire to control other people's perception can make ordinary social interaction feel artificial. What if people really are judging you? At this point, it is tempting to say, just stop caring. But that advice is too simple. People really do judge each other. They form impressions. They make mistakes. They gossip. They criticize, they exclude. Sometimes strangers are cruel, sometimes other people's opinions have real consequences. A job interview depends partly on how you are perceived. A relationship depends partly on how two people perceive each other. A reputation can affect opportunities. Social rejection can have real emotional consequences. So pretending that judgment does not exist would be dishonest. The healthier goal is not to become completely immune to judgment. It is to develop a more accurate relationship with it. You can ask, is this person's opinion relevant? Do they know enough about me to make this judgment? Is there useful information here? Did I actually do something wrong? Or am I reacting to the possibility that they might dislike me? These questions separate reality from imagination, and that separation can be powerful. The stranger test. Here's a simple thought experiment. Imagine someone dislikes you. Now imagine that person disappears from your life forever. You will never meet them again. No consequences, no relationship, no professional connection, no future interaction. Does their opinion still matter? Sometimes the answer is yes, but often it suddenly feels much smaller. Now change the scenario. Imagine the person is someone you deeply love and respect. Suddenly their opinion matters much more. This reveals something important. We don't actually care about every opinion equally. We care about certain opinions because they come from people who matter to us. The problem is that our minds can sometimes treat the opinion of a stranger as though it carries the same weight. It doesn't. A random person's judgment should usually carry less authority than the judgment of someone who knows you well, cares about you, and has earned your trust. This does not mean friends are always right. It means that not all observers have equal access to the truth about you. Who gets a vote? Imagine your sense of self as a country. Every person you encounter is technically allowed to have an opinion about you, but not everyone gets a vote. A stranger on a bus, they can have an opinion. A random internet commenter, they can have an opinion. A person who met you once, they can have an opinion. But why should any of them automatically have authority over your identity? Maybe they should not. You can listen without surrendering control. This is one of the most important differences between being open to feedback and being controlled by feedback. If someone tells you that you were rude, consider it. If someone tells you that your work has a weakness, examine it. If someone you trust points out a pattern you had not noticed, take it seriously. But if someone who knows almost nothing about you insults you, you do not have to turn their words into a verdict. A judgment is not automatically a fact simply because someone expressed it confidently. The strange freedom of being misunderstood. There is a difficult truth that becomes liberating once you accept it. Some people will misunderstand you, no matter how carefully you explain yourself, no matter how kind you are, no matter how honest you try to be. Someone will eventually form the wrong impression. They may think you are arrogant when you are shy. They may think you are cold when you are overwhelmed. They may think you are careless when you are exhausted. They may think you are weak when you are trying not to hurt someone. And sometimes they will simply dislike you. There is no perfect behavior that prevents this, because other people are not machines receiving your personality exactly as you transmit it. They interpret, they project, they compare, they remember, they misunderstand, they bring their own experiences into the encounter. This means part of becoming psychologically free is accepting that you cannot completely manage another person's perception of you. You can communicate clearly, you can behave honestly, you can apologize when necessary, you can improve. But eventually, you have to let other people have their interpretation. They are allowed to misunderstand you, and you are allowed to continue living. Why authenticity is hard. People often say, just be yourself. That sounds wonderful, but there's a problem. Which self? The self you are alone, the self you are with your closest friend, the self you are at work, the self you are with your parents, the self you are when you're tired, the self you are when you're frightened. Human beings naturally adapt to different social situations. That is not necessarily fake. A person can behave differently at a funeral than at a birthday party without being dishonest. We are social creatures. Context matters. The deeper problem is not changing behavior. It is changing yourself so completely that you no longer know what you actually value. You begin asking, what do they want me to be? Instead of, what kind of person do I want to be? That shift can quietly take over a life. You choose a career because it sounds impressive. You dress for approval. You hide opinions that matter to you. You avoid opportunities because you might look foolish. You refuse to try something because you might fail publicly. Eventually, you may become very good at avoiding judgment, but you may also become very bad at living. The cost of being seen. Every meaningful life contains some possibility of embarrassment. If you create something, someone may dislike it. If you speak honestly, someone may disagree. If you try something new, you may fail. If you ask someone out, they may say no. If you change careers, people may question you. If you publish your ideas, someone may criticize them. If you stand up for something, someone may mock you. There is no way around this. To be visible is to become judgeable. But the opposite is also true. If you make yourself completely invisible, you become much harder to criticize. You also become much harder to discover. The musician who never performs cannot be booed. But nobody can hear the music. The writer who never publishes cannot receive a bad review. But nobody can read the book. The person who never speaks honestly cannot be misunderstood. But they also cannot be fully known. This is the uncomfortable bargain of human life. To be seen is to risk judgment. And yet being seen is also how connection becomes possible. What would happen if you stopped caring completely? Let's take the idea to an extreme. Imagine you genuinely stopped caring what anyone thought. No embarrassment, no concern about reputation, no desire for approval, no fear of criticism. At first, this might sound like freedom. You could say anything, wear anything, do anything, ignore every opinion. But eventually something strange would happen. You would lose useful information. Other people sometimes see things we cannot see about ourselves. They notice when we are being unfair. They notice when we are becoming arrogant. They notice when our behavior hurts someone. They can teach us. They can challenge us. They can warn us. They can encourage us. Complete indifference to others would not necessarily be freedom. It could become isolation. The goal, then, is not to destroy the social instinct. It is to put it in its proper place. Listen to people. Do not worship their opinions. Care about relationships. Do not build your identity entirely from approval. Learn from criticism. Do not confuse criticism with truth. Respect other people's perspectives. Do not surrender your own. That balance is much harder than simply saying, "I don't care," but it is also much more realistic. The difference between "they don't like me" and "I'm not enough." Consider these two statements. They don't like me. I'm not enough. The first is about a relationship between two people. The second is a judgment about your entire existence. The first can be true without being devastating. The second turns a small social event into an existential verdict. And humans often make this leap without noticing. Someone rejects you. Your brain asks why. Maybe you were incompatible. Maybe the timing was wrong. Maybe they wanted something different. Maybe they misunderstood you. Maybe they simply weren't interested. But the mind can choose another explanation, because I'm not good enough. That explanation feels powerful because it seems to explain everything, but it is often much larger than the evidence allows. One person's rejection tells you something about one relationship. It does not necessarily tell you the value of an entire human being. The problem with imagined judgment. There is another important distinction. Sometimes we are not reacting to what someone actually thinks. We are reacting to what we imagine they think. This is one of the most exhausting forms of social anxiety. You see someone glance at you. You imagine they are judging you. You hear laughter. You assume it is about you. Someone does not respond to your message. You assume they are angry. Someone walks past without saying hello. You assume they dislike you, but the actual evidence may be extremely weak. The mind creates a story. Then the body reacts to the story as though it were confirmed. This is why asking, "What do I actually know?" can be surprisingly powerful. Not, "What am I afraid is true?" Not, "What could this mean?" But, "What do I actually know?" Sometimes the answer is almost nothing. And that realization creates room for other possibilities. Maybe the person was distracted. Maybe they were tired. Maybe they did not see you. Maybe the laugh had nothing to do with you. Maybe they disagreed with you. Maybe they did judge you, but you don't know. And uncertainty is not the same thing as rejection. Why caring can actually be a sign of something good. There is another way to look at all of this. Maybe the fact that you care what people think is not merely a weakness. Maybe it reveals something valuable. You care because relationships matter. You care because you want to be understood. You care because you do not want to hurt people. You care because belonging matters. You care because you want your actions to mean something. You care because humans are social creatures. The goal should not be to eliminate that sensitivity. It should be to prevent it from becoming your master. There is a profound difference between "I hope they like me" and "I need them to like me." Between "I wonder what they think" and "I cannot be okay unless they approve." Between "I made a mistake" and "my mistake proves I am worthless." The first versions are human. The second versions can become prisons. A more useful question. Perhaps the question, "What do they think of me?" is not always the best question. A better one might be, "What kind of person do I want to be, even when I cannot control what people think?" That question changes everything. Instead of trying to control the audience, you focus on the performance. Instead of asking whether everyone approves, you ask whether you acted according to your values. Instead of asking whether you looked intelligent, you ask whether you were honest. Instead of asking whether you appeared confident, you ask whether you did what mattered despite being afraid. Instead of asking whether everyone liked you, You ask whether you treated people well. This does not eliminate judgment. It changes the center of gravity. Your life becomes less about managing impressions and more about making choices. The stranger you are most afraid of, there is an even deeper twist. Sometimes the stranger whose opinion we fear most is not really another person. It is the imagined version of ourselves watching ourselves. We create an internal observer. We imagine someone judging us. Then we judge ourselves for being judged. You feel embarrassed. Then you feel embarrassed that you felt embarrassed. You become nervous. Then you criticize yourself for being nervous. You make a mistake. Then you attack yourself for making the mistake. The original event may be tiny. The internal reaction becomes enormous. At that point, the social threat is no longer entirely outside you. You have brought it inside. You become both the accused and the judge. And sometimes the judge is far crueler than anyone else would have been. A stranger might have forgotten your mistake within minutes. You might remember it for years. That tells us something important. The hardest judgment to escape may not be other people's, it may be our own. Imagine you could see everyone's thoughts. Now, imagine a strange technology. You walk into a room and suddenly gain access to everyone's thoughts. At first, you might be terrified. What do they think of me? Then you listen. One person is worried about money. Another is thinking about dinner. Someone is wondering whether their hair looks strange. Someone is replaying an argument from yesterday. Someone is worried about a sick parent. Someone is thinking about a meeting tomorrow. Someone is wondering whether the person they like will text them. Someone notices your shirt, then immediately starts thinking about something else. You might discover something astonishing. You were never the center of the room. Neither was anyone else. Everyone was trapped inside their own moving universe. And perhaps that is one of the strangest facts about being human. We live among billions of minds, but we experience only one directly, our own. So we naturally assume our inner world is larger and more visible than it really is. We feel every insecurity, every doubt, every embarrassing memory, every mistake. Everyone else feels theirs too. That means the person you are afraid is judging you, maybe just as busy worrying about being judged themselves. The social animal inside the modern human. Maybe this is the real answer to the original question. Why do humans care so much about what strangers think? Because we are not designed to be completely independent individuals. We are social animals. Our minds were shaped by relationships. We learned who we were partly by watching other people respond to us. We survived through cooperation. We depended on trust. We needed reputation. We needed belonging. We needed to know whether others accepted us. Those ancient pressures still live inside modern minds. But the world has changed faster than our emotional instincts. A stranger on the street is not necessarily part of your social group. A stranger online may be thousands of miles away. A negative comment is not exile. A failed presentation is not banishment. A bad first impression is not the end of your social existence. But the emotional system can still react as though these moments carry enormous weight. That is why knowing something intellectually does not always make the feeling disappear. You can know that nobody cares and still feel watched. You can know that rejection is survivable and still feel afraid. You can know that one person's opinion is not a definition of you and still hurt when they dislike you. Understanding the mechanism does not make you superhuman. It simply gives you a little more distance from the reaction. Maybe freedom is not caring. We often imagine freedom as reaching a state where other people's opinions no longer affect us, but perhaps that is the wrong goal. Maybe freedom is not, I don't care what anyone thinks. Maybe it is, I care, but I don't surrender myself to it. You can feel embarrassed and continue. You can be criticized and listen without collapsing. You can be misunderstood and explain yourself without begging for approval. You can be rejected and remain whole. You can walk into a room knowing that someone may judge you and decide that you will live anyway. That is a much deeper kind of confidence. It does not require believing that everyone will like you. It does not require pretending that criticism never hurts. It does not require becoming cold or indifferent. It requires accepting a simple fact: you cannot control other people's minds. And once you truly accept that, an enormous amount of wasted energy becomes available. You no longer have to constantly manage the invisible audience. You can pay attention to the actual conversation, the actual person in front of you, the actual moment, the actual life you are living. Think again about the stranger in the coffee shop. They look at you. For a moment, your mind begins its familiar process. How do I look? Did they notice me? Do they think I'm strange? Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. You will probably never know. And that uncertainty is the point. You could spend the next hour trying to solve a problem that has no available answer, or you could take a sip of your coffee. Because there is something strange about caring deeply about the opinions of people whose inner worlds we cannot access. We are trying to control something fundamentally uncontrollable. Other people will form impressions of us. Some will be accurate, some will be wrong, some will be kind, some will be cruel, some will last for years, most will disappear almost immediately, and none of us can completely manage that. The person who likes you today may change their mind tomorrow. The person who misunderstands you may never understand you. The person who dislikes you may have reasons that have almost nothing to do with who you really are. And the stranger who glanced at you across the coffee shop may already have forgotten your face. Yet there you are, carrying their imaginary opinion around in your head. Perhaps the real challenge is not learning how to make strangers approve of us. Perhaps it is learning how to let them remain strangers, to allow them to have their opinions without turning those opinions into commandments, to accept that being seen means sometimes being misunderstood, to accept that being human means sometimes being embarrassing, to accept that belonging matters but universal approval is impossible, and perhaps most importantly, to understand that a person's opinion of you is a piece of information about their perception. It is not a final verdict on your existence. You will never be able to control every mind that looks your way, but you can decide which voices deserve a place inside your own. And maybe that is where real freedom begins.